Welcome back to Keeping It Real, estate related. And this week we're going to be talking about timing the market or time in the market when it comes to selling your home.
Time in the market, conversation over.
Yeah. What?
Exactly.
Time in the market.
I was gonna say I tried to make it so it all sounded the same. So
Yeah, and there's a big difference. And if I'm just going to kind of clarify, timing the market we get asked a lot of, hey, when should I sell my home? You know, people have the idea that summer is the only time homes sell, or spring market is the only time homes sell, or if I had to choose one window, what would it be? And oftentimes your need or your want to sell doesn't line up with a 4-week window in a 52-week year.
Yep. So the question being then, should you try to pick a very specific time for your house to be on the market, or do you just get on the market when you're ready and let your house sell itself?
Get on the market when you're ready.
Get on the
house
market.
will sell itself.
Yeah. Because go for it.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, looking at trends and stuff, yes, we all know that there tends to be more active buyers during spring and summer months. But that's not to say that, you have more or better qualified buyers in the fall and winter markets. Those are buyers who they have to buy. So they're coming in with more intent, where spring and summer you get more bodies through, but there may not be urgency there. You might not get your best price or your best opportunity at the market. So I think it's tough to say, yep, here's your window to maximize the sale of your house.
Yeah. One of the examples that I use for this is you never know where the right person for your house is and when they're buying. The example that I use for this is a few years ago, I had a listing appointment that came up, and it was for a lake house right outside of Buffalo, and beautiful house. And we went out there, and I was like, this is a probably $1.25 million house, like really, really nice. And they said, all right, well, should we do this now? Should we list in the spring? And I just said, maybe we try now, just put it up for a month. And if it doesn't sell, we'll take it off and we'll put it on again in the spring. We had 2 offers within the first 2 days. One of them was cash for $100,000 over asking price. You think that we had the right buyer at that time. Like that's just a situation that I look at and go, that person was looking for that house at that moment.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Timing the market and waiting till spring, that person might have already bought something before then.
Yeah.
Correct. And you had no crystal ball to know that buyer was going to come by.
Yep.
But again, your sellers were ready to list their property.
Right.
So again, you can wait your feet to try to time, or you can wait to try to time the market, but ultimately the market's going to dictate when your property sells. So if you're ready, get it on there.
And the fact is, there's no crystal ball. I mean, you can only take one path. You can either do it now or do it later, or not, or I guess not do it at all. So
Yep.
I guess that's the third path.
Yeah.
The path less traveled. But there is no crystal ball. When we're taking a look at it, we can always back it up with some examples. Now, this is one that by the time this airs, it's already been closed. They were thinking about taking it off the market. They're like, hey, you know what? Let's just push pause, until that spring market, until it gets warmer, a little bit more green. And my thought was, well, one, we're already here. If you do this, we had some stats to back it up, saying there's a lot more activity here. The domino's falling. If you take it off for a month, you might miss these new buyers that are coming through. Less than a week later, we had multiple offers. So they would have missed those 2 buyers had they taken it off. So and then that's kind of even just strategy-wise of price reductions or availability. So if you're not available by when these new buyers enter the market, they don't know it's available. They're going to go buy something else, especially if you have a not so unique property. Right. That's a caveat.
Correct.
If you're a 3-bed, 2-bath split in town, there's a ton of them. Pick the timing that's right for you. It will sell to somebody.
Yeah.
It's a marketable piece. If it is, super niche, you should probably list it anyway, because if your buyer pool is very small, they're going to be, it's either going to sell right away or take an extended period of time to sell as buyers see it, learn about it. There's either somebody right away like yours at, 1.2 that'll buy it right away. Or somebody's like, you know what, I like that. Maybe we should consider that one. where they have to kind of go through that whole process. So
Yep.
you were the victor, or the seller was the victor on the front end of that one. But we've also seen people say, yeah, we had a flurry of activity, they didn't want it, and then it dies down if there's something unique about it.
And
they're
then
like,
it sits for 6 months.
yeah,
Correct.
yeah,
But like one of the things that we've also, that I would say that we will advise is based on the reason for going off the market temporarily. And for example, a listing that I had last fall, it didn't show great. It was in pretty rough shape. The seller said that they were willing to do some work if we took it off the market. So we took it off the market, and it sounds like things are getting fixed up. They're going to make it look nicer. That's a good reason to be like, yeah, we're timing the market here. Let's take it off for 1 to 2 months. Let you do the work. We'll go back on as things start to green up on this 60-acre parcel of land. Like, it's going to look better once it's green. But we did spend that time on the market. We know that there's a lot of people interested. It wasn't quite a good fit. But hopefully by fixing it up, by making it more appealing, we'll be able to bring that buyer in again. But
And I'm assuming you guys were able to kind of leverage some of the buyer feedback that you had received from people that went through it.
yes,
So,
definitely. We know one of the main reasons why people didn't buy it, and so that's hopefully getting addressed during this month. So, yep.
yeah. And really, there's only 3 reasons why properties sell. And as marketers of it, our job is to get as many eyes on it. But those 3 things are location, can't do anything about that, condition, or price. Everything will sell if those things are all in line. Location, you can't do anything about.
I thought maybe you were going to say location, and then location, and location.
Yeah, no. Price and condition are those
Price
2
and
other
condition.
ones.
Okay.
If you don't want to bring the condition up, price has to come down.
Yeah.
correct.
If you can bring the condition up, maybe the price can still stay the same way. You're still spending money to do it, but those are ultimately the 3 things that are going to sell it. And time on the market, our job, our conversations with these ones that are sitting is, are we outperforming other listings? Are we getting more eyes on it? Are we having a better, favorable impression on the internet? So it said, hey, there's buyers out there. They're sitting on the fence right now. And is that what we're doing? Right. Yes. It might not result in a sale at, any given Tuesday, but it's we're outperforming what our competition is. And then ultimately that buyer will come through and say, yep, we want this. And then we're going to navigate it at that point.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is important to note, that just because we're saying that time on the market is important does not mean that the house is going to sell right away. It just means that we're trying to get it out there for the most eyes from the point that you are ready, because waiting might have eliminated 3 months worth of buyers, and one of those might have been a buyer that would have been interested. So
I think to really boil it down is, it really comes down to, if you're ready to list your property, now's the time to do it. There's no, if you're arbitrarily saying, well, the spring market's going to be better, so yes, I'm ready now in January, but I'm going to wait until April because that's going to glean me my best opportunity. Get it listed right away in January. And maybe you don't get that right buyer until March or April, but that right buyer could be actively looking at that moment in January, and they see your property because you're now available.
So then I'd ask the question, are there bad times to put your house on the market? And I'll give a couple examples to say, is it the holiday season? Is it election season? Is it back to school? Is it end of school, 4th of July week? Do we look at any of those and go, okay, yeah, maybe avoid?
If I had to pick, if I had to pick 4-week window where it's probably the worst and the best time, I would probably go with Thanksgiving to Christmas. I know it's probably 5 weeks. That's probably the worst time of just people actually coming to see your house, in person.
Yep.
But they're still scrolling on their phones because they're kind of sick and tired of, all the, they need more elbow room during, holiday season. They're like, hey, our house isn't big enough to host 25 people next year. So, but I think that's probably the worst as far as showings goes. And if I had to pick the next 2 weeks, it'd probably, weather dependent, it would probably be like the last 2 weeks of April, first 2 weeks of May of probably, if we're going to just narrow it down of what I think the 4 best weeks are, probably that narrow time frame. But, half of April through July is probably your most buyer activity through the year.
Yeah. Yep. And that's just kind of why I wanted to bring it up, is to say we're acknowledging that there are times of the year where a lot of people come through the house and less people come through the house. But like you said, you might have a person sitting at grandma's house on Christmas Day scrolling through their phone because they just got done gorging themselves and they can't move for a little bit. So they're like, all right, let's look at houses. And
Well, that's one thing I actually like to leverage because again, people still kind of have this concept of real estate being actively going and walking through houses, and the market's not that way anymore. So again, during those holiday months, yes, we typically see less activity for showings, actually coming through your front door and walking your property, showing up at open houses. But you have a flood of people that aren't at work, aren't at school, and they're on their phone. They're looking at your property. And if your property is there for them to look at, what happens early January?
Yeah,
You get a spur of activity. Buyers come in and they're snatching up properties in that 3-week window in early January. Guaranteed those buyers were looking at properties in November, December.
Mm-hmm. And what we see, and now we really haven't had a normal year in about 5 years, like
Correct.
a normal cycle. So this kind of take it with a grain of salt. You're exactly right. Is they were looking back then. You'd see that flurry of activity in January, and then everybody gets excited about it. And now there's a lot more inventory. Again, now that's still something we struggle with right now.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden it looks like, well, homes are selling in 2 days in January. Why isn't that happening in March? Well, those buyers that were pent up purchased already.
Yep.
So they're no longer looking. And now there's extra houses for sale too.
yeah,
So it's, you take a look at it, but ultimately it comes down to, are you ready to move on?
100%.
You shouldn't really be worried about everybody else or every other listing. Are you ready to move on? All right, let's get going.
Correct.
At this time.
I think it's good. I think it's just good to acknowledge that we do think about these things as well, where we go, yeah, you know what, there's this cycle, but essentially, as you had mentioned with your people that are closing this coming week, or they're going to already be closed by the time this comes out,
Yeah.
is that they had the time on the market, and every buyer saw that house. Like they know exactly how people felt about the house, what people were thinking, because they went through that entire market.
Yeah.
So,
The unfortunate part about that is we had a conversation. It was either there's a buyer right away or it's going to sit. I should have knocked on wood and said, and $1 million because we found a buyer right away to pay our price, the high end of the value. But the buyer got cold feet, overnight and then canceled on the contract. So that was the emotional high. It's like, hey, it worked. And then all of a sudden it sat.
yeah.
And so, you had the emotional roller coaster for sure in that transaction. But one of the stats that I like to pull is just because some people think it only sells in the spring or summer. In Wright County, where we primarily work, and it's probably the same throughout the state too. I should probably pull the stats new. But about 45% of the homes sold happened in quarter 4 and 1. And 55% happen in 2 and 3.
Sure.
Summer. So it's not that big of a difference, but the showings are different. Every showing in the winter months. Prime example, the one we sold up in McGregor.
Yeah.
I think you showed that when it was 30 below zero.
Yeah, I
In a
remember.
seasonal cabin, walking down a very steep driveway. Hip deep snow.
I brought a shovel, yes, and I remember I had to dig through snowbanks and snowdrifts just so we could get down there, and yeah, because they wanted to see that house. People don't do that unless they really want to see it, and it was miserably cold.
Each showing is way more valuable in those situations.
Yep.
Now, thank you for driving up to McGregor to show our listing.
Gladly.
But they ended up buying it.
Yeah.
It was we put that extra work because it was available. Now, nobody would say, "Hey, 40 below zero with heavy snow drifts
It's
and
ideal.
this seasonal cabin that you have to walk down a cliff." It's probably not an ideal time to be, for sale. It's that summertime. But they bought it and they enjoyed it for the spring market.
Yep.
Correct. So there you go, quality versus quantity.
Yep.
During that time, your quantity is going to go down dramatically. But the buyers that are in the market looking, they're serious buyers. Like, you're not going through all of that just because you were curious. Like, they legitimately were interested in that property.
Yes.
They wanted to see it to make sure that their interest level was appropriate, and it worked out. Is it always that way? No. But
we come up with examples all the time.
correct.
Right.
On when it did work.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. But if you have any questions or you want to get started, you can always get right in contact with us, northstarprorealty.com, or go ahead and send us a message or however you can get a hold of us. So, but I'm Tyler Reese.
Eric Olson.
And Jeremy Welter.
Peace out.